On today's show, contenders or pretenders of the Eastern Conference. Do the Philadelphia 76ers have what it takes to upset the reigning champion Boston Celtics? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. First, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime because, look, I don't know about you, I love going to live events. It could be sports, could be going to a baseball game, basketball game, could be a concert, whatever. There's nothing like it, right? Being in that live atmosphere, it's incredible. And GameTime is the best way to do that. It's the best way to buy your tickets for any kind of event. And GameTime even has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different ticketing offers. Look, and I don't know about you, my least favorite thing when I'm trying to buy tickets usually is you're going through and at the very, very end of the process, you get hit with like the digital handling fees and the service charges and all that. You don't get that with GameTime. They give you their all-in price up front, so you know exactly how much you're paying from the very beginning. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Joining us now is the host of Locked On 76ers, Keith Pompey. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On 76ers. Here's we are going to debunk contenders or pretenders in the Eastern Conference. So, Keith, let's start right there. Why should the Philadelphia 76ers be considered legitimate contenders going into this next season?
You know, it's crazy when you say that because there's been a lot of excitement for the Sixers over the last couple of years, right? And they failed to impress. But I think that, you know, when you look at what they did this offseason, you know, getting Paul George, who was, you know, arguably the most sought after free agent out there, and then the fact that they were able to add some other role players who can help them, you know, I feel like that having Nick Nurse as the coach and already having Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, those are the reasons why you have to say that the Sixers are legitimate contenders right now, just because of they reloaded with defense. They have a lot of wings. They now have two power forwards on the roster. So I feel like those are the reasons why you have to say the Sixers are legitimate contenders.
It kind of feels like the NBA has transitioned away, though, from like the big three model, quote unquote, of three major star players. What makes this version different for the 76ers and why you think it could work for Philly?
You know what? I think the reason why you can say that this version is different, because the last time that you had three guys who played on three different tiers were the Miami Heat when they won it, right? And then before that, you can say it was the Spurs, right? When you have the three different stars. So that's the reason why I look at it. You have a guy like Paul George, you know, he's a wing, you know, he can play the guard forward position, but he doesn't need the ball, right? He can play. He's a great defender. He's a great two-way player. So I feel like with that way, it works because, you know, he can fill in a role. Embiid can do what he does. Maxey can do what he does, and I feel like they can all coexist. Now, in today's basketball, a lot of times when we go after big threes, you know, you got two guys who need the ball in his hands, and you may have two guys who play similar positions, meaning that someone else has to play out of position. The fact that you have a point guard in Maxey, you have a wing and Paul George, and you have a center in Embiid, that's why I believe that this one can work.
What do you look at as one advantage that Philly has that no other Eastern Conference team has at this point?
You know, the one advantage that they have to do is he has to stay healthy. I still think at the end of the day, the biggest advantage that they have is Joel Embiid if he stays healthy. You know, you look at it, we're talking about Eastern Conference, but you look at it, and you say, who are the best bigs in the league? It's Nikola Jokic and it's Joel Embiid. And then after that, they go a level down. And then in the Eastern Conference, you have a lot of undersized bigs or slow bigs. So I feel like, Joel Embiid is always at an advantage no matter where he goes and wherever he plays. So that's the thing that I will point out.
This might be you might have just already covered this though, because if we flip it, then you start looking at this team top to bottom. What would be the major weakness that you can identify with this squad? Is it as simple as just health for this Philly squad?
You know what I do? I think that's the major weakness because, we talk about Paul George, and yes, Paul George is going to be an upgrade, right? When you look at him, you say, okay, he and Tobias Harris, okay, he's better than Tobias. Let's go there. But I feel like, this team is still built around Joel Embiid, right? And if Joel Embiid is injured, they're not going to be as bad as they were last year. But when you look at pecking orders, can you honestly think without a Joel Embiid that they can compete against the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks? And let's say, hey, Milwaukee is getting better, healthier, and the same with Indiana. So I feel like the biggest weakness they would have, or they would try to stay away from, is a healthy Embiid, or they would love to keep a healthy Embiid rather.
Well, then let me dig a little deeper here. Then, assuming perfect health, because I want it, because unfortunately that could be a cop-out answer for all 30 teams in the NBA. Yeah. Oh man, if an injury happens, then it derails everything. So assuming healthy, everybody's healthy, what would you look at as maybe one of the biggest points of weakness for this team, assuming everybody is playing at 100%?
You know what? I think, the biggest points of weakness for this team is that I do think that they're kind of old, right? I do. When I compare them age-wise, comparable to the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks, I look at the Knicks as one of the top young teams. I feel like the Boston Celtics have guys right now in their prime. When you look at the Sixers, they have a guy, and he's a guy that you're familiar with, but they have Eric Gordon, right? Older. They have Reggie Jackson, older. Kyle Lowry, older. You know what I mean? So, how are they going to be able to compete against those young guys from the Knicks and those guys from Boston who are in their prime? So I feel like that's the biggest weakness. We don't know who's going to be able to step up and produce, against these young emerging teams.
So right now, Boston Celtics are the defending champs. They're the team to beat in not only just the Eastern Conference, but the NBA at large. Are the 76ers the biggest threat to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference right now? And if not, who is the biggest threat to the Celtics right now?
This is going to upset a lot of 76ers fans, but I believe if Julius Randle is healthy and he comes back, I believe that the New York Knicks will be the biggest threat. And the reason being is, when you look at that, you have to say to yourself, who do the 76ers have on their roster who can defend a Julius Randle, especially when you have Mikal Bridges in that lineup? I mean, I feel like that's a dangerous lineup of Brunson, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG, right? Julius Randle, and then just throw in a center. You know what I mean? Like, just throw in a center. I feel like that could be a tough matchup for the Sixers because I don't know if they have anybody who can guard Randle, right? Because of what he does. So I think that right now, if Randle is healthy, I believe that the New York Knicks is the biggest threat to the Boston Celtics, not the Sixers.
So final one I got for you, Keith. If you were to rank these four teams right now, I'll give you, we'll say power ranking of these four teams: Celtics, Sixers, Knicks, and Bucks. What order are you going in?
That's a great one. Believe it or not, I'm going Celtics, I'm going Knicks, I'm going Sixers, and I'm going the Bucks. The thing about the Bucks, like, believe me, man, like, I see the Kool-Aid, I see everything. They're like the fun team to pick, but back-to-back first-round exits, and it's different reasons. To me, there's still major questions with them. Doc Rivers, has basically struggled in the playoffs since he left Boston. That's one thing. Secondly, you have Milwaukee. You don't know how healthy they are. right? Although they're saying they're healthy, we don't know. So with that being the unknown, I have to go Boston, Knicks, Sixers, Bucks.
Will the Philadelphia 76ers be able to make it out of the Eastern Conference this next season? Will they be the team to beat the Boston Celtics? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On 76ers. Keith, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Thanks for having me.